So my presentation in celebration of Earth Month and Earth Day is a whole new Earth, basically the art in Mother Earth. Again, my name is Nefertiti Schell. I am a mixed media artist, a Reiki master and healer, also an esthetician student. I've kind of just jumped into this art world just the end of last year, especially post-COVID. There was just a lot of things that were gaining out of my control and I wanted to change. I did a lot of accounting work, so just a new breath of energy, new vibes, and a new chapter for me. So starting out, we're just going to go over an overview of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to begin with how Earth was formed, a little bit of the 7 wonders of the world, and then also Earth during COVID, how much transformation that we saw during this 1 year of quarantine. And lastly, we're going to conclude with some call to actions on what ways you can do to save Mother Earth. So, Earth was formed about approximately 4.5 billion years ago. A lot of it is contributed that basically all these gases formed together, created Earth to be the 3rd planet within the solar system. It's just amazing just how much art, even within the universe, things that we can't see close up, has created life and beauty within itself. Shortly after, some of our starting regions, especially with Africa being one of the first countries and colonies to have life, and life was present. We also know a lot with the Egyptian histories. There was a lot of new life and history going on with the Egyptian gods and goddesses. They were believed to be not of human, but really of gods with animal-like features, human bodies, and being above this earth plane, whereas they also talk to other beings in the galaxy. But again, we don't have much history or written evidence. We can only go based off the science and things that were dug up. Shortly after Earth was formed, 1 billion years after Earth was birthed, life formed. We started really within the sea levels, and as evolution started, life in the lungs and the body started to develop. Today, we are celebrating the Earth as Earth Day, and Earth Day came to be in the spring of 1970 by an individual named Gaylord Nelson. Their goal was to bring in more on a national level. They noticed just the life, and especially around springtime, you just see a lot of things blooming, and as years go on, things evolve, adapt to its environment. So you can see the difference in how we're breathing, how the trees, new animals, new creatures, and you just wonder, okay, how can we preserve this in the long haul? How can we save ourselves and these living creatures that don't really have a voice? So that's why we celebrate Earth Day. This was a really great quote in regards to the 7 wonders and just like celebrating Mother Earth. It's by Rachel Carson, and the quote says, "The more clearly we can focus our attention on the wonders and realities of the universe about us, the less taste we shall have for destruction." And that really hit for me because we have all these amazing things and we question how can we preserve this. And a lot of our preservations now are, made in a lab, made in a factory, and then it's killing us in the long haul. So the 7 ancient wonders are these 7 figures as follows. We have the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Temple of Artemis, and the statue of Zeus. And there are different 7 wonders, but I think it depends on the person behind it, what they see as wonders. And it's kind of like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. However, these were the 7 ancient ones, the first ones that were published, and not a lot of them still stand to this day. One of the biggest one and largest wonders that still exists is the Great Pyramid, just because in Egypt they really conserve and preserve their history and they're very serious about it. Even to those that visit the artifacts, they take great pride knowing who comes on this land and who has access to these artifacts. So starting off with the Great Pyramid of Giza, as I said, it's one of the largest and still standing wonders that still exist to this day without much destruction. The Great Pyramid started basically in 2560 BC, and it's located in Egypt. Oh, excuse me. And it's about 481 feet tall. And there's some more information. Let me see. Just based off what was amazing was the artifacts and like the materials that it's made out of. And basically, this pyramid is made out of limestone, granite, basalt, and mortar. And it's just crazy because it's like even back then they didn't have as much materials and resources that we have now, but they were able to still make with what they did, and it's a great monument to this day. It just tells you how art transforms with time. Next, we have the Colossus of Rhodes. So it looks kind of barren right here. It's because the statue that existed here fell due to an earthquake. So this statue was basically like the welcoming point of this great city, this great country located in Greek, I think in Greek, I believe. And so the monument that stood also was a sun god, Helios, but it also represents kind of like the Lady Liberty that we see in New York now. And so this monument represented one of the great wonders of the world. And it started with the knees collapsing after an earthquake. Oh, excuse me. This is actually located in Greek, the Greek island of Rhodes. This monument was also built between 294 to 282 BC. And let's see. The monument was made out of bronze core and enforced with iron. So again, like earth component, earth materials. They didn't have a lot with what they did, but they did a lot with just heats, earth, dirt, and just all the 4 elements, which I found amazing. But with technology, I felt like if they had it today, they would have been able to save their statue from destruction, been able to predict some of the earthquakes that were going to come, and been better at reinforcing this monument. Next, we have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I don't know if this is exactly the still representation of it because there was quite a bit more of drawings, but there is also perception that we don't really know where the Hanging Gardens of Babylon truly exist. A lot of the archaeologists are still trying to find where that lives. And basically, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is started because this king wanted to provide more of a home space for his queen because she was missing her homeland, her native land. So they basically created this humongous garden of life, of nurturing flowers, trees, animals, just being one with nature. And it it made me think like, maybe it's great that it is hidden because with a lot of people, they just like to take and take without really pouring things back into the world, without planting a seed for it to grow more. And so they probably kept it hidden, or it could have probably also went underneath water because of natural disasters. Next, we have the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which is located in Egypt. This monument, my notes. This monument was built in 280 BC, and it stood about 400 feet tall. This was for ancient Egyptian port cities for them to just guard who was coming in and out. And it's because they had a lot of material resources, and especially with East Africa, a lot of people went to East Africa to learn, to study. So it was very big on education, learning things for the body. And so this lighthouse stood as a big monument in Egypt. And the materials used for this were used to also construct another monument later in 1480. I'm trying to see where the materials that they use. I don't think it's mentioned anywhere, but I imagine also iron, dirt, um, and limestone, as well as what the materials they used to build their pyramids. Next, we have the Temple of Artemis. And the Temple of Artemis was very amazing, just some of the pictures that I saw of it. This lives in Turkey. And I believe they also did like rebuilt it somewhere else, or at least like a second temple that resembles the first one. So the first one was built, they said it was built and destroyed by a flood. It was built in the BC around the 7th century. And the second temple stood following after in 550 BC to 356 BC. Um, However, it was burnt to the ground, and then we have another replacement. So this temple was very amazing just because of how much destruction has gone and the people really wanting to rebuild it, um, just to connect also with their gods and just religion and how it transformed into today's world. Now it still stands in Turkey, and a lot of people do tour it. They also provide offerings. And this was in honor of the Greek goddess of hunting. So if they wanted a really prosperous hunting or feast, they would do offerings to this temple. And I think this is my second to last. So we have this next one, the mausoleum at the Holocaust. And so this monument, a little bit of it, it's also located in Turkey, and it was built in 350 BC. It was originally called the Tomb of Mausoleum, and it was designed for a Persian ruler's wife. However, this was kind of the mock-up because the original is tore down. It's not really in great shape, and it was destroyed by an earthquake as well. I find this interesting because each level basically had figures that represented basically like a protection, because as you go higher and up, you know, you usually have the gods overlooking everyone else. But you can kind of see on these figurines that it looks like there's a little bit of war, chaos as you move to the top. And then you have um, four horsemen at the top. And lastly, we have the statue of Zeus. Statue of Zeus can be found at Olympia in Greece. Um, to me, this just gave me flashbacks of just, you know, growing up on the movie of Hercules, and just like, you know, the scene he's talking to Zeus and he wanting to go to the gods, be with his family again. I believe just a lot of people just worship Zeus as the sun god, especially in Greece. And just in those different regions when life started, because we have like Greece, Egypt, and like the Middle East, where a lot of religion, testaments, and stories have been told, a lot of findings with modern medicine and things that we practice to this day. Zeus is just really strong because of how much ties he had against all the other gods and how, I guess, destructive you could say he can be. Like, although he was light, he was also dark. And so just this balance that he had with his people. The statue of Zeus, let me see here for my nose. So the statue of Zeus was built in 435 BC. The statue is made out of gold, ivory, and wood, and also stands about 40 feet tall. They say the statue was lost or destroyed sometime in the 5th century. And just a lot of things were lost between like the 4th century dynasty to the 7th century. If you think about like the 300-year gap, but a lot of live arts and things that we find at the core center of our creativity is all linked to these 7 wonders. I found this really interesting 4-minute little news article interview with this gentleman named Sir David. And he's the one that talked about how life is transforming once we went into quarantine of COVID. So let me exit out so I can show you. Oh no, okay, let me start this over.
Add no sound.
Thank you. I think it's my sharing, so let's see. Share some. Hopefully you guys can hear that now.
Nature celebrating there. A new documentary reveals the astonishing ways that nature flourished as humans went into lockdown during the pandemic. The Year Earth Changed on Apple TV Plus is narrated by the legendary natural historian Sir David Attenborough.
Overnight, our lives are put on pause. But as we stop, remarkable things start to change in the natural world. Clearer air, cleaner waters, and animals starting to flourish in ways we haven't seen for decades.
I have 2 more examples in a non-David Attenborough voice from the film. With no humans on the beach, the nesting success rate for loggerhead sea turtles in Florida jumped to 61%. That is the highest scientists have ever seen. And in San Francisco, with car traffic down, white-crowned sparrows are singing new notes. Researchers hope the birds will have their best mating season in years. Earlier this week, we spoke with Sir David and the documentary's executive producer, Mike Gunton, about nature's remarkable rebound. Sir David, I want to begin with you. I have a little piece of paper here that says you can be called only David, but you'll remain Sir to me,
yes,
if you don't mind. You have long maintained that the wild on this planet will survive with us or without us. I guess during these lockdowns, we kind of got proof.
Yes, not just survive, it does rather better, as you might imagine. Less noise, less fume in the air, more space. What more do you want if you're a wild animal? So natural history of the creatures around us, they've flourished by and large in this last year.
Your cruise also filmed humpback whales in Alaska, where the cruise industry was shut down. What was the impact of that, and what did you see with the whales?
Well, by and large, every animal has done better without us, and that's not surprising. In this instance, the whales were able to communicate again with their young much better than they were in the past, so that the young could hear their parents feeding some distance away, and the parents didn't mind going away. And that's why, in fact, the whales have been doing very much better.
Mike, this one's for you. You know, I thought it was just me that the birds were singing louder and that they were clearer. How did you know that this was happening? What did you see that made you think we need to capture it and we need to capture it now?
Well, funny enough, the very first thing was birdsong. We were all thinking, so hold on, this is this new soundscape, there's this silence, and suddenly we hear birds. So we all thought, if we move quickly, something interesting is happening here. So it came actually initially from the sound of a bird song, but then it sent out this wave of exploration all around the world.
Mike, I have a thing for penguins, and you shot penguins walking empty streets in South Africa. Why that was important for the penguins?
What happened there was those penguins do kind of cohabit with people under normal circumstances, and we thought that's fine. But when lockdown happened, the beaches were empty, and what was actually going on? The penguins went out to sea to catch food for their chicks, but when they tried to come back during the day, beaches full of people, they didn't want to come ashore. They stayed out to sea. When everybody left, the penguins, rather than having to wait, were coming in many, many times during the day. So their chicks were getting fed much more frequently. And the consequence of that is that they did better. Some of them had twins, and some of them even had a second brood. So again, it shows us that we think we know what's going on in the natural world, but actually it was this situation, this lockdown, that drew back a sort of almost like a veil and let us see what actually happens to the world when we don't tread so heavily on it.
That's a great way to put it.
So that is a little bit of the interview. You can find it also on YouTube. I just found that really interesting, just because like when you leave things alone, things start to flourish. And so that's what I really took from that little short video from Sir David, as they absorb just the animal life transforming. And I think just even it goes to how, even as humans, how we're transforming with COVID. We see a lot more births happening. We see a lot of more people taking care of themselves and their health. And although we could say 2020 was kind of a lost year, I think we gained a lot from it. It made us really sit back and think heavily like, okay, what can I do differently, knowing with these restrictions? And so some of my call to actions were to reduce, recycle, reuse, and repeat. So if you have anything, or you start opening things, some of the things that should like flow in your mind, like, okay, is a different alternative for me to either recycle this? Am I using all of my materials of this said product? And how can I pass this on or make sure that it's safely discarded? Another way that you can help save the earth is conserve water and resources. So it's like when you're not using your water, can you shut off your faucet? Maybe you have water that is a little tainted because you left it out, or however, can you use that water for your plants? Can you use it for something else to give it life, to nourish it? Can you light candles instead of turning on a light? Can you turn on one small light versus a whole room light? So things in those little small instances can make a big difference. And then also choosing sustainability, just in regards to like collecting things more real versus like fast fashion, where we see a lot of waste going into that. So maybe you want that specific style cut. Can you pay a designer to make that same material or that product, but with better quality fabrics that can last longer versus being destroyed in the wash or have to be quickly discarded? Some of the things that came to mind also with the true sustainability, choosing things that are more eco-friendly and also human-friendly. Like we always think about like the economics on the ecosystem, but who made these materials? Was they properly compensated for their work? Does this company really value their labor? So those are some of the things to think about when you are shopping, when you are using resources and trying to better yourselves. And that was the last slide. So thank you for being here today for Earth Day. Just a little fun fact that the world actually dumps a massive 2.12 billion tons of waste every year. So just knowing that, knowing we've also are going on our second year of quarantine, how can you save and reduce the waste that's happening on Mother Earth? And that's my presentation.